All right, thank you so much. And let me begin by introducing Thomas. For many of you who had been there on day one, he needs no introduction, but just for benefit of those who have joined us today, Thomas leads Hogan's assessment. He's an international authority in psychological profiling, consumer analytics, and talent management. Thomas is also the professor of business psychology at University College London and has previously taught at New York University and London School of Economics. I have to say 8 books, 100 papers. I was reading a lot of them yesterday, and I would highly recommend all of you who are interested in a career in HR to definitely refer to them. Very, very fascinating read. So Thomas, let me begin by asking a very fundamental question, right? Can human potential be ever measured reliably and accurately?
Well, thank you for having me here, first of all. And the answer is yes. It can be evaluated, and I think fairly accurately and reliably. Potential is always about probability. So it's about quantifying the probability or making a bet that an individual will do something in the future. So if you're interested in high potential employees, for example, you're making a bet that an individual will be a good leader in the future, or an entrepreneurial employee, and so forth. So I think, first of all, we need to understand what talent is. Talent is an explanation that we choose to account for exceptional levels of achievement in an area, sport, science, arts, or work. And potential is talent in the making, talent before you can see it. So really, to the degree that you can quantify talent and explain exceptional performance, you're trying to identify what causes that and measure these things ahead of time.
Okay, great. Now, I know that you've spent years of research in this space, right? How have you seen this entire space evolve over years? What have been the most profound changes that you've seen?
I think the most profound realization is that not much has changed, really. We tend to focus on superficial changes, which is what technology seems to bring, but actually 2,000 years ago, the Han Dynasty in China was using the equivalent of an assessment center to evaluate potential. It put people through a standardized examination, it evaluated general knowledge, domain-specific knowledge, Confucian values for fit, and that is still the case in current or modern assessment centers. And psychological assessments have been around for 5 or 6 decades. So the only thing that has changed is that technology enables you to do the same faster, quicker, simpler, but a note of caution here that we need to wait for many of these novel technologies to prove that they have similar reliability and validity as old school methods. So I think there is a lot of potential for the field. Right. But so far, we haven't quite seen a revolution yet.
So when you look at, the companies who have actually gotten it right, what are the 3 things we could really learn from them?
I think the companies that are doing things well, I would put in 2 camps. New technology firms such as Google, Amazon, LinkedIn, Spotify, because they're engineering firms. They're very good at being data-driven and at trying to focus on just raw predictors of future performance. There are politics in these organizations too, but they're less political. And then traditional firms that have really always done talent management well, Shell, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Accenture as well, who are really good at not getting distracted with shiny new objects, and they just really apply the science very well.
Right. Now, you have done a lot of work in space of personality. So could you talk a little bit about is there a correlation between personality and potential? And, again, if you could help with some examples.
Yeah, so at Hogan, we focus really very much on personality. And our basic premise here is that who you are determines how you lead. So personality is key to leadership potential, not just our studies, and we profiled over 5 million leaders over the past 3 decades, but independent academic research shows that personality alone accounts for 45 to 50% of the variability in leadership effectiveness. The personality of the CEO accounts for 25% of variability in firm performance. You know, that's just after a 1 hour assessment of a CEO's personality. So it's not the only thing that matters, but it's very, very consistent, very important, and that's what we focus on.
Okay. Now, talk to us about, given that we are talking about technology and digital, how is that revolution? I know that you mentioned that it has had an impact on speed, but apart from that, what is that we can expect to see?
Yeah, so first of all, come to my keynote in 10 minutes or so because I'm going to be talking about this. I call it a Bitcoin for talent.
Okay.
And I think, we are going to see in the next 5 years firms and algorithms integrate a wide range of data that are already available for us that is being mined currently for marketing and media purposes, but leverage that for HR and talent purposes.
Yeah.
Then we know that virtual reality, will represent the modern version of kind of assessment centers or work samples. We know that gamification is enhancing the user experience when it comes to assessment. And I think even technologies to mine digital interviews, scraping video and voice and speech data can actually make more reliable and more objective prediction than human raters. So we're moving very fast in this field, but the next 5 years will be critical.
Critical. Now, I know that a lot of companies who have adopted technology-based solutions, one of the reasons they do it is because they feel it will reduce bias. Now, are algorithms truly unbiased?
Yeah, I mean, so robots and algorithms can't be biased because by definition they don't give a damn, they don't care. So you can program them correctly or not. You can train machines and algorithms to ignore relevant or irrelevant variables, but the most important thing is that they'll be consistent. So at least if there is an irrelevant bias, you can factor that in, quantify for it, and de-risk the operation. Whereas with humans, you might be more biased than I am. I might be biased vis-a-vis, a certain group, you someone else. So it's very hard to actually standardize that. And when 3 or 4 people are interviewing together, it's a circus. It's a political kind of glitch, and we operate under the illusion that adds reliability, but it does not.
Right. Now, in your experience, and I think this is particularly going to be very useful for people who work in multinational and multicultural organizations, have you seen an impact of workforce demographics like a gender or culture on personality and hence potential?
So I think, there is generally, I think, a healthy trend for organizations to, I think, try to become more diverse and understand that with diversity comes a challenge, which is that one size does not fit all, and you have to understand people for whom they are. Now, personally, as a personality researcher, I don't care very much about demographic categories like gender, age, or generation. Because in the science of personality, we understand that every individual is unique. And technology does enable you to understand people at an individual level. So these categorizations are not very healthy, to think, oh, millennials are entitled, millennials are hardworking, women are, less aggressive than men. Well, it depends who you're talking about. So, much like you wouldn't indulge in nationality stereotypes, why is it okay to do it with generations or with genders,
But then what about levels? For example, hiring a CXO versus hiring a campus, right? I mean, what has been your research and what has been your point of view? Sure,
there are also, and we can slice and dice the data in any way. And yes, the profile of a successful CMO will be different for the profile of a successful CFO or CHRO. But really, fundamentally, the universals of, for example, good leadership account for 80 or 90% of performance. Whatever you are, whatever organization you're running, if you have more integrity, more people skills, more self-awareness and better judgment, you're going to be a better leader. So if focusing on the 10% that is specific is an excuse for ignoring the generic, I don't agree with the conversation.
Okay. Now, without taking names from the client, but do you have a good example to share where a company or a set of companies has done particularly good job in identifying high potential leadership talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will mention PepsiCo because we have been working with them around high potential for many years, and actually Alan Church, who runs their high potential program, is one of the most prolific scientists in the area as well. So it's a nice demonstration of you can be an academic practitioner in a large corporation within HR, you know, and I think what's amazing about their program is that it doesn't just apply evidence-based research to their practices, it's also advancing the science because large organizations can really obtain real-world measures of performance. You can look at different divisions, different departments, and you know all of this is published in independent academic journals. So I don't have to summarize it here, but you know it's been published in places where there's a difference between a white paper where you're just promoting yourself and what you do and something that has the seal of approval from the academic community.
Right. Now, I know that you mentioned that nothing has significantly changed fundamentally for last 2,000 years because the core of the assessments has remained the same. What can we as practitioners do to change that trend as we look into next 10 years or 15 years?
I think the most important message for the HR tech community or tech HR community is to not ignore the well-established practices in science that have worked and have been around for ages and understand what that can do so that you can build upon that. And you know, there's a lot of progress to be made, but there is currently a big divide between technologists who ignore the science and, for example, organizational or management science, and management scientists who are technophobic and they behave as if technology is a fad that is going to go away. It's important to bridge that gap. It's important for technology firms to not just get engineers, but also content people, or if not, get advice from people who understand the contents, because with technology plus content can produce the biggest advancement. You know, even today we talk a lot about data, but science is data plus theory, and that's the most powerful combination. When you don't just describe or predict what's happening, but you can also explain and understand it. So I think to the degree that technology can enhance science, it will advance practice.
Right. Fantastic. Now, I think what we can do is we can open it up for Q&A in case you guys have questions. Please feel free to ask.
We left the audience speechless, is the question. I have that effect on people, you know.
My name is Manchong. I'm from Self-Driven. So the result of what you say mean that you know, it all boils down to, are you, based on your personality, you are a leader or you're not a leader?
It's not as categorical as what you put it, but what I'm saying is that it's incorrect to assume that any individual is equally likely to become a good leader, that we can actually understand their profile, their personality, and on that basis you can make an evidence-based prediction that will be far better than chance. You know, if I have two people and I flip the coin, I have 50% probability of ending up with a better leader. If I use personality assessment properly, it goes up to 80-20. 80-20, it's a considerable, very attractive ROI, you know, especially if you do it for 1,000 people or if organizations do it year after year.
So you do leave us speechless, Tomas. I know this is about talent acquisition and not just necessarily about high potentials, but I heard you talk a little bit earlier about PepsiCo and high pots. You know, in the new work that Hogan has put out there, the Hogan high potential model, where you talk about leadership emergence being different from leadership effectiveness. Could you perhaps talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the most interesting things we found in our research is that you know, the personality characteristics that propel people to be nominated for leaders or to become leaders are very different from the qualities that are needed to lead effectively. Obviously, you have to emerge in order to be effective, but most people emerge because they self-promote, they're kind of narcissistic, they blow their own trumpet, they're politically savvy, and they manage upwards. And these people don't suddenly become altruistic and other-oriented when they are in leadership positions. And on the other hand, you have people who fly under the radar. They might not self-promote, but actually they have what it takes to be a good leader. They have empathy, they're altruistic, they're competent as opposed to confident. So I think most high-potential interventions need to get better at differentiating between emergence and effectiveness, help individuals who could be effective emerge, and stop those who naturally emerge from emerging, because otherwise, we have a problem.
Hi, I have a question. So Thomas, in future, do you think we can do away with assessments?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think that in the future, passive assessments will play a much more important role. I think if it's done responsibly, if you show that, let's say, your Facebook data or your Twitter data or your Uber rating actually is a valid signal for something, and you enable individuals to opt in, and you have a transparent relationship with the user, I think they can have huge utility, mostly in the pre-hire market. And what's interesting is that potentially they can provide you with some self-awareness so you can understand yourself better and make better decisions, and employers with an indication of what your potential is. So I think it's definitely a very promising area.
But isn't that, also what you show publicly, a bit of trained data?
A bit of what?
A bit of trained data, because people do not want to show their real self, especially publicly, right? On Facebook, you're going to possibly write all the right things, right?
Well, I think we are very interested in the fake version of you. Really? Because we believe that everybody is mostly fake when they're at work. You're not the same person you are with your friends, with your husband, with your wife. You're pretending to be a good employee or a good leader. And I'm perfectly happy with that fake version of you. If the alternative is the real you, but an awful person that just does whatever he or she wants, has no self-control, and we always say the real you is somebody you should be ashamed of. If 4 or 5 people, your best friends, can tolerate it, but most people prefer to be a fake version of you. And so the person we pretend to be on Facebook is not too different from the person we pretend to be with our colleagues or in any high-stakes situation, in an interview or so forth. So long as you can maintain it, so long as it predicts future behavior, that's okay.
Well, on the hindsight, interview is also fake, possibly.
Yeah, exactly. Everything I said is really fake. I don't mean it for a second. And, I'm not the person you think I am.
One final question before we close.
Why is there so much emphasis on becoming a good leader nowadays in organizations? Not everybody can be a leader, right? Why organizations want every individual to become a leader?
Well, I think they shouldn't want every individual to become a leader. I think they should have different career paths, trajectories. It shouldn't be the case that the only way to get promoted is to become a manager or a leader. But then organizations should care about improving the quality of their leaders, because with better leaders you get better strategy, better culture, better talent. So the ROI is highest if you invest in those in charge.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Thomas,
so much.
for
Thank
a
you.
brilliant conversation. Thank you.